Hello. Exactly. Um, so, all right. Yeah. Mm. Ooh. Ooh. Let me, yeah. Yeah, I can't, I put the volume on. I can't hear you either. There. Well, while we get all that worked out, just bear with us. Bear.
And then, yeah.
Hopefully, it shouldn't be too long. We just got to make sure everything is unmuted in slabs, which is always a joy to work with.
And it'll show up in your mixer.
Is it in my mixer? Oh, it is. Okay, now I'm here. All right. I should be audible now.
Hi, bye.
Thanks, Abby.
Oh, there you are.
All right, there we go. So sorry about that. Anyway, thank God for captions.
Yes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to System Talk, a show where Megan and I have technical difficulties and discuss RPG systems.
Yes. We
Last
are professionals.
we are professionals. No, we're not. We're just having a good time.
Yeah.
So I was saying before my own audio was so rude and decided not to pick my audio up, uh, we are going to be talking about D&D adjacent fantasy role-playing games. And the term D&D adjacent, I kind of use it basically meaning like, if you don't want to be playing the D&D, you could be playing this instead. So, Megan plays in one of our groups in No Initiative crew that plays on Monday nights, and they recently started a brand new Quest RPG campaign, Quest to Soaring City. Check it out if you haven't. And Agora's Bells recently just switched from 5th edition to Fantasy Age. Look at that wonderful book. Both are really cool systems, and those are the systems Megan and I are going to primarily be talking about tonight. We might mention some other ones. And this is an interactive show. So if you've got questions in chat, drop some questions in chat. We will try our best to answer them, and away we will go. All right, Megan, if you want to start off telling us a little bit about Quest and what that's all
Yeah,
about, core mechanic, all that good stuff.
absolutely. So yes, hi, I'm Megan. I'm one of the people who streams on this wonderful channel. And like Alex said, I play with a group called No Initiative. We play on Monday nights. We had been playing 5e. We recently, for our new season, switched to Quest. So Quest you may have heard about. It's been going around a whole lot on the internet. It is published by the Adventure Guild. It is an incredible and incredibly easy to pick up and learn system. It is, so if D&D is your crunchy peanut butter, Quest is your creamy peanut butter. It is very, very mechanics light. It's so easy to pick up and learn. So your base mechanics in this game, it's a D20 system, and that is it. You use no other dice when you are playing Quest. You are using a single D20 for all of your rolls. There are no modifiers. There's stats. There's none of that. You roll a single D20, and everything is based on that. So a 20, as in most games, is a triumph, which is obviously the best that you can do. Going down from there, if you roll an 11 to 19, that's a full success. If you roll a 6 to 10, it's a success, but you need to make a tough choice, which if anybody plays anything that's like Powered by the Apocalypse, they use tough choices a lot as one of the base mechanics in those kind of games, which is something that I, as a role player, really love. So I love seeing that as an option in this game. A 2 to 5 is a failure, and then a 1 is a catastrophe. So a lot of that, being that it's so open and loose, there's a lot of room for narrative interpretation of that, which for us in No Initiative, being a very role play narrative focused group, this jives so well with the way that we want to play the game. We want to make narrative decisions and let our characters in the story lead our actions rather than mechanics and dice rolls and things like that.
Yeah. It's pretty chill. What else about it?
Yes. I can see how people who lean more towards like the crunchier side of TTRPGs may have a little more, may hiccup a little bit if they were trying a game like Quest because it is so loose.
That's me.
And yeah, like it all depends on what you want. Like if you are a mechanical person, Quest may not be exactly right for you, or you may just take a little time to get used to something like that. But if you're somebody that really leans into the role play and the narrative part of TTRPGs, this is so great from that standpoint.
Yeah.
It's also
So you're saying like if I've played like a Powered by the Apocalypse game, I've tried like City of Mist. I actually ended up really liking it. It's a really you're right. It's a very jarring switch going from something like D&D all the way to something super narrative based.
For sure. Yeah.
So if I understand it correctly, if you enjoy Powered by the Apocalypse hacks and systems, you're gonna really like Quest. If it's like you wanted D&D and Powered by the Apocalypse to get married and have a kid and all that good stuff, like Quest is kind of like the baby they would have.
For sure. Yeah, I think if you enjoy PBTA games, and recently I have been playing almost exclusively PBTA games, so Quest was so wonderful to jump into from that standpoint. And I think one of the biggest things about Quest is how little time it takes to get going. So
I noticed that about it when I flipped through the book that I have.
Yeah, so just to start, like character creation, I've got my character sheet for our No Initiative. So this is your character sheet. It is a Mad Lib that you fill in with a list of options, and it's literally a Mad Lib that is like, I am the parties, and then your role, and then like defining features of your character and their hopes and their dreams and what gets in their way and their flaws, and it's as easy as you read across the page and you just pick and choose the options from the lists that you like, or you can add your own in.
Yeah,
So
it's pretty cool.
it's
So
super cool when a lot of RPGs, like when you're making your first character, you're sitting down for like an hour plus to make
yeah,
sure your character sheet is set up and you have your modifiers right and you've got all of your
yeah.
stats the way you want and your equipment and all of that.
The pick up and playness of Quest is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, full disclosure, we were discussing it a little bit beforehand, and I kind of referenced it, making the joke while you were talking
Yeah.
about it. It's not really my jams sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and like that's cool though. I do see a lot of the merit with it. It's
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about this a little bit beforehand too,
Yeah.
where Quest is really good for beginners, people who've never touched a role playing game in their life. I was actually talking with Abby the other day about games because I've been doing a lot of game design,
Mm-hmm.
looking at other systems, looking at other actually D&D adjacent systems.
Mm-hmm.
If you're into D&D and you want to just basically play D&D but cooler, 13th Age exists, which we're not talking about, but I'm going to mention since we're talking about D&D adjacent systems. But one of my biggest gripes with that game, which is where I'm bringing this back full circle, is a lot of games are written with the assumption that the reader, aka the player,
Mm-hmm.
the new person who just picked up this
Right.
book, has played an RPG before, has played
Mm-hmm.
something. And 13th Age is very guilty of this, where they assume you've played Dungeons and Dragons of some variation in the past, that's fine. They're marketing it as an alternative to D&D. I mean, whatever. It's the lead designer of 4th and 3.5 making a game together. But Quest is beautiful in that they don't assume that. They take the approach. The Adventure Guild, is that it?
Yeah. Yep.
They take this really neato approach of like, oh, so maybe the person reading this book has never touched an RPG and they've never even heard of the concept of it. And oh, hey Issa, and it's like shit. It like I've got the privilege of having decades worth of experience in RPG. So picking up a rule book is no problem for me. It
Right.
kind of makes sense. I can kind of get an idea of how the game flows, even though you really don't from reading a rule book anyway.
Yeah. And I mean, even there are some, like, I've been playing RPGs for quite some time, and I know when we were getting ready to play Zweihander,
Yes.
I had
Lot of
a
stuff.
lot of I had a lot of trouble making my character sheet because there's just so much awesome stuff to dig through
Yeah.
to make sure you're getting it all. And like
That's
having a lot of experience with TTRPGs, like I could navigate it somewhat, but there's so much good meat there that you
yeah.
always feel like you're missing something. Where Quest is very much like you get what you see, you just go through your list, you make your character,
Mm-hmm.
like as far as like classes and leveling up goes, it's so easy. The different roles are so cool. And the abilities are so cool. So I'm playing a spy in our no initiative game, and within the spy there are a bunch of different, I guess I'll call them subcategories that
Mm-hmm.
you can choose from, or I think they call them like skill trees because that's kind
Okay.
of the way it's set up.
And hopefully
So
this will
like,
answer Axolotl's
uh,
cure in the chat,
yes,
asking about like how does Quest handle skills? Because that's actually something
yeah,
I've been wondering too. Is like
yeah,
you look at any other RPG, and it's like D&D. You have skills and modifiers that basically skills and
mm-hmm.
ability scores are what you add to rolls to express how your character is good at certain stuff.
Right.
How is my character good at shit compared to everyone else? D&D
Yeah.
uses skills and modifiers.
Mm-hmm.
Some systems will use tags, aspects. I've heard that phrase in like
Yeah.
Fate or something.
Uh,
So what does Quest do?
so Quest, so like I said, it's a 1d20 system. There are no modifiers. There is no math in Quest, which is great for people who don't like math like me. But the way that it works is like you roll your d20 and that tells you if you fail or succeed and what degree to which you have failed or succeeded. But a lot of the stuff in Quest, so Quest works on an AP system, so they work on action points,
Mm-hmm.
and certain moves require a certain amount of AP. and
Uh-huh.
the moves just work.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the moves, so like if you're casting a spell, it
S-
just works. Like you
s-
spend the AP, the spell works, it has this effect. If you are like attacking someone with a sword, you'll still roll to
mhm.
see if you attack. But a lot of the time, like you're not rolling. Like my character has a magic item called a feather hook that is basically like a magic grappling hook,
Okay.
and I don't have to make climbing checks with it. Like I have a magic grappling hook. It just works because it's something that I have chosen as what
Oh.
my character has.
Sorry, the light bulb's finally going on for
Yeah,
me too over
like
here, who's only flipped through the book a few times. Um,
yeah, so
so in
it just
so instead of like getting a plus to your roll, you're
mhm,
like, no, I just can automatically succeed at certain
yes.
things other characters
Yep.
would have to make an attempt at and potentially
Mhm.
either fail or succeed with because of those levels of success.
Right. Yeah. So
Okay.
in the creation and the design of the different roles really feeds into that. So like another, I'm gonna be going basically off of the spy because that's what I'm playing and that's the only one I've read like in depth. But
Hmm.
like I have an ability that allows me to conceal two weapons on my person. Like
See, that's
I am not
cool.
I am not going to have to make a roll to try and convince somebody that I am not carrying weapons on me
See, and that
because I have spent one of my abilities, because what you do is you have a set amount of abilities you can choose.
uh-huh. And that's that
And
flavorful shit I love.
oh,
Ugh.
it's so it's delicious because then what happens as far as progression and stuff like that goes is like you have um your AP at the end of every session, you get a new ability, period.
Okay.
Um and it works, you go up trees. So this is going to be
Yeah,
really bad.
yeah, I
So
noticed that.
if
It's
I want, so if I want this ability, I
uh-huh.
need to first take these two before I can take this one.
And for anyone who can't see in the
Yeah.
chat because they're just listening, it's kind of like divided in the little skill tree,
Yeah.
like little trees. Like your abilities kind of build on
Yep.
themselves
Hmm.
as you continue. And sorry, I'm just
Yeah.
it's all
Yeah.
starting to kind of click for me. That's why I'm like,
So
ooh, ah, ooh, yeah, and like want to like say shit because I'm like,
yeah.
oh,
So you work your way up your trees and you can take them from anywhere. So like so my spy has abilities from four of the six different spy trees.
mm-hmm.
And then at the end of every session, you get a new ability automatically, and you just pick what you want to do. Another cool facet of the spy is the only role that can make magic items. So
Okay,
you can choose, instead of taking a new ability at the end of a session, you can choose to instead make a magic item,
okay. We got some
which,
questions
ooh,
from chat that actually segue pretty well. TK
oh,
Pirate
perfect.
13 is asking how many classes are there and how similar to D&D are they? We'll answer that one first because I feel like that'll be kind of a
Yeah.
quick one to get through. And then we'll get to Axolotl Cure's question after this one.
Yeah, perfect. So in Quest, there are, I'm going to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Yeah,
7.
there
There
are
are
like a ton.
8.
Yeah,
There
there's
are
not a
8
ton.
different roles in Quest. Um, and as far as how close to, so I'll read them off to you. Some of them will sound familiar to D&D, some of them won't. So we have the fighter, the invoker, the ranger, the naturalist, the doctor, the spy, the magician, and the wizard. So kind of what they did and what I think is so cool is they took a lot of what you think of as like your standard D&D classes or your standard fantasy TTRPG classes, and they split the abilities up and distributed them in a way that is unlike a lot of what I've seen. So like I think the biggest thing is if you think of a bard in
Mm-hmm.
D&D, and bards have a wide breadth of different kinds of abilities.
Yeah.
um they're Each of these roles kind of has like one or two trees that's very bard like, and there isn't like a straight bard one. So like the fighter has like a tree of camaraderie, which is all about inspiring your team and forming bonds with your
Yeah.
teammates and
Yeah.
in that kind of thing, which is very bard like the naturalist has like a storytelling path,
Okay.
um
So
which
it's
is kind of
so it's kind of like
yeah.
sorry, I'm like just trying to like graft my own mind around this.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you have your base classes, and then these skill
Mhm.
trees are like your
Yep.
subclass almost. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of what it
Yep.
looks like. Okay.
Yeah. But you don't. There are no, unlike D&D where you pick like your class and then you get your subclasses. There's just the subclass trees.
Okay.
Um, so it's so like your invoker is like a summoning type spellcaster.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like the doctor is a healer, but the doctor is also like some cool like necromantic stuff is in there as well.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's kind of like it
you're
provides you with a few different archetypes, and
there's a
then
bunch of different archetypes, but it's not what you expect them to be. Because
okay.
like the spy is a rogue, but the spy is also espionage and
Yeah.
subterfuge and infiltration, and it's very much not what, at least when I was looking through them, it's not what I expected based on the rules, which
Mm-hmm.
is really cool. Because there are so many, it gets into so many different areas and gets much more specific because
Yeah.
there are 4 to 5 sub trees for each role, and it is a lot of times like it chopped up
Mm-hmm.
your standard classes that your inabilities you're used to and kind of redistributed them
Nice.
in a
Okay.
totally new way, which is wicked cool.
Yeah, and if you can't find something for you, rumor has it that quest is not only super hackable, but the
Oh,
creators
yep.
encourage it. They have like a really
Yeah.
awesome creator
An
like
amazing
thing, open license.
commons license. Yeah, an
Yeah.
amazing open license. There's so the creator, the writer of Quest is so like encouraging of people hacking and adding new things to Quest, and he wrote it to be that way and actually pushed to get that open license out earlier than expected, because I remember he had said like, oh, it'll be out in like a week, and then he's
Yeah.
like, no, like it'll be out tomorrow, like I'm pushing this through because
Yeah.
he wants it to be something that is growing and evolving as people like have ideas for Quest and want to write more. I know I'm currently working on some Quest
Wouldn't
hacks
be lying if I said
myself.
wouldn't be lying if I didn't say I've considered messing with it. But
um yeah,
let's answer Axolotl
yes,
Cure's
axolotl.
question here. It if a is it a character's capability in any given task is determined by abilities you can spend points on? Does that narrow the scope of what a character will end up being quote unquote good at? Um,
um Definitely not. um there's a, a wide breadth of what the abilities cover, and you can take from playbooks within your role as you will. But a lot of it, as far as like determining what your character is good at, a lot of it, as well as a lot of stuff with Quest in general, is very narrative based. It's up to you, it's up to your guide to
okay.
figure that out. There aren't like a lot of the stuff in Quest is, if you say you want to do something, you just do it. There's no, if you say like, oh, I want to look around to see if there's someone there, there isn't a perception check. You're just going to look around and see,
Okay.
unless the circumstances are such that something is hidden and things like that. Like the guide will determine
Mm-hmm.
whether or not you need to roll, but a lot of the things, because Quest has just this 1d20 that you're rolling for everything, it's so narrative driven. Like,
Okay.
and it's hard. I know, especially like when we played our session 0, we did a one shot to see if this was a system that we were going to like going forward with no initiative. And oh, the first hour or so was very hard for us. Like a lot of times we would stop and be like, well, what do we do now? Because we're so used to asking to make rolls and being like,
Yeah.
oh, like roll for this, roll for that, roll for this. You like, we played our session last night, we didn't roll a die a single time.
Yeah.
We played for 3 hours with a lot of really cool interesting action, but the narrative led that.
Yeah.
So that's something that's a little jarring coming from a system that is heavily mechanical. So your limits are really your imagination. Like if you want to create a character that's good at XYZ,
Yeah.
you have it, and you can make your abilities reflect that, or you can make your narrative reflect that.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe being a grognard at 27 is having me like, but no, I need mechanical differences between my
I need to
characters.
know how good I am at things.
I see merit in both
Yeah.
designs. I really do. That's why I have a hard time partaking in any design discourse, because it's like, well, I can see the merit of this. Well, I can see the
Right.
merit, unless it's like a very obviously
Right.
bad mechanic or
There,
problematic thing. It's like with Quest, it's like, yeah, I might not be super into that idea. I might really much more
but you know
enjoy.
people who are like, there's
Yeah.
no one size fits all TTRPG.
No, and I think
And
we were talking about that before we
yeah,
even jumped on,
yeah,
like talking about different strokes for different
yeah,
folks, right?
exactly. And it all depends on what you want. Like there, if you like D&D for the combat and the mechanics and the crunch, there are a ton of great systems that will do that as well. If you like D, for example, what's coming up next. Um, Whereas if you like D&D for the role play and the storytelling, then something like Quest is going to
Look,
jive with you.
I know we said we weren't gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. If you're playing D&D because you want to get narrative, you're playing a really shitty system for it. All right, I'm done. All right, that's the one thing I'm gonna say about D&D. That's the one bad thing I'm gonna say. We said we
You know
wouldn't
what?
do it. I
I
broke the
will allow
rule.
that because it's true. But
Um,
but I could go on. But yeah, so Quest, that's kind of it in a nutshell. If you're looking for something that is a good narrative storytelling tool, just to sit down and play good stories with your friends with very low bar to entry,
mhm.
it's super easy to learn.
I mean, shit, y'all
It's
picked it up in like basically a week, right?
yeah, yeah, we played a one shot of it like 2 weeks before session one, and then just kind of hopped in. Like it's that easy. Like
Yeah.
it's that easy to get started with it. Like if you have friends and you're trying to get them into TTRPGs, like Quest is such a good, like it's such a good starter TTRPG, but it's also a good one if you've been playing games for years. Like I've been playing
Yeah.
games for years and I love it very much. And I also can see how great it is for somebody who has no experience playing a role playing game. This
Yeah.
makes it so easy
Yeah.
to mechanically, and a lot of the moves are written in a way that helps you turn it into a narrative moment. So it'll
Mhm.
have mechanically, this is what your move does, and then it'll have a little thing that's like your character will do XYZ to make it happen. Like it's written in a way that helps you create the narrative of your
Okay.
story, which is really cool.
See, I mean that's great. I mean honestly, I probably should give it another chance. You see, because like I've played Powered by the Apocalypse hacks. I've played City of the Mist. Speaking of games that aren't like super crunchy, super easy to pick up on, super
I
freeform
could
and
go on.
open.
We can
Yeah,
do a whole episode on PBTA because I will
we could do
go
like
off
20.
if yeah,
We
if
could
you let
do
me go
like
off on
a
masks, I could go off
bajillion.
on masks for like 4 hours, and I don't think anybody really wants that.
It, my point is like I didn't think I'd enjoy it, but I actually ended up
Mhm,
loving telling really cool stories. Got to
mhm.
make jokes about like some of those in-game jokes got to become mechanical jokes. Like my character, like for some reason, twice in a row we went to the third floor and he just failed miserably. So he got like a weakness tag for like the third floor, like the and it's cool that you can express that in a game. Like that's kind of fun, you get all these inside jokes and it's
Yeah.
just I don't my point is like I didn't realize I was actually really good at like that
Mhm.
storytelling thing. I thought I've leaned on the mechanics, but then the more I've done the whole streaming thing and people are like, "Wow, you're telling this really cool story. Why the fuck are you using D&D?" Like um it kind of hit me like, "Oh, maybe I am actually." So like you don't know unless you try it is what I'm trying to say like.
Exactly. Like in that's what it's all about. There's so many systems out there that
Yeah.
if you're playing a system that you don't love and that you are playing and you're like, oh well, I really wish I was getting X out of this, there is a system that exists
Yeah.
that will do what you are looking for. It's just a matter of getting out there and seeing
Yeah.
what it is, and that's why we're here talking about these systems, is that if you are playing a game and you're like, well, I really wish it did a little bit more of this, then we can hopefully guide you to some other games. And speaking of guiding us to other games,
so Captain
Alex,
Crunch here.
Why don't you tell me about Fantasy Age, because I know literally nothing about Fantasy Age. So let's rock.
I will try my best. I am not going to claim to be I will claim to be maybe on the way to being a journeyman in this system. This is a recent acquisition of a system. So were you just kind of sitting there the whole time thinking, oh man, I wish I had ways of mechanizing my character? Fantasy Age is the game for you. Fantasy Age uses instead of a D20 or a 2D10 or a D100, Fantasy Age uses a 3D6 system. And I know you're thinking, wow, that is freaking wild. But it works out really well. Because here's where Fantasy Age, in my opinion, really shines. With 3D6, it's not swingy. The things you're supposed to be good at, you will average out. Your modifiers will get you there to succeed at them. And one of your D6s is separate from the others. And anytime any of your D6s on a roll show a match, you get to quote-unquote stunt. And one of your D6s is your stunt die and tells you how many stunt points you have, which is like stunts are like these special tables. And it's like, instead of critting and dealing less damage than with my regular attacks, I get to do cool maneuvers, and like you can stunt skill checks. So it's like
stunt on them.
Yeah. So it's
please tell me you say that you're like, oh, we're gonna stunt on them.
Well, I mean, I do. You can say whatever you want, but that's what I say.
All right. Okay. As long as somebody's doing it right.
So the really cool part is like, because you're rolling 3d6, you stunt a lot in the game, and it's just like, oh, this feels really cool because now there's a little more oomph and strategizing behind stunting, because it's not all just deal extra damage. It might be like your ally can make an attack. Oh, you can put yourself in a more favorable position. Exploration stunts might be like, oh, you get you're able to get a good look around the area. Danger can't get the drop on you. That's the core mechanic
really cool.
of Fantasy Age is fantastic. And my big suggestion is, and actually Matthew Foreman from Dice Priory, shout out, suggested using the other Age systems and their stunt tables, because they have much more. Fantasy Age was kind of the first time Green Ronin, the developer, stepped away from the Dragon Age system, which they made the official Dragon Age. Yeah. And Age stands for Adventure Game Engine. And Fantasy Age was kind of their way of making their just a generic high fantasy game around that Adventure Game Engine system. And so they've made other ones like Modern Age, which is like, do you want to play Age but in the modern era with guns and shit? The Expanse, which is like based off The Expanse, so it's like hard science fiction Age. And the
Expanse is so I mean I watched the show, and the show is so cool, so I can only imagine that a game based on it is also cool, because I love me some space.
If you enjoy hard sci-fi bullshit, The Expanse is for you. And the stunts from The Expanse, so good, because it's like they put more focus into the stunts later, because like after they made Fantasy Age, they're like, holy shit, these stunt things are really fucking cool. And like
potential.
So Matthew Foreman gave us the recommendation when we were switching over, saying, hey, check out the other stunt tables. So I highly recommend doing that with Fantasy Age. The books are wonderful. They're not too expensive. Here, I'm going to turn off my virtual background for a hot second here, so we can all take a pretty gander at the book. The book is about half as thick as the D&D book, for a comparison point. And it was like $25. So it's great for those who like, oh, I don't know if I want to spend a lot of money trying a new system.
And for me, that can't stop buying TTRPG books. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, what's another book, right?
I do highly. We actually talked a little bit about Age and what we all thought about it as a cast after the most recent episode of Agora's Bells last week. I mean, not last week, 2 weeks ago. Where we all kind of gave, yeah. We all kind of gave our initial thoughts, and stunt's really cool, but I'm going to kind of get into the other parts of the system here as well. Fantasy Age definitely has a much more traditional setup to your character. You have ancestries, and they were using ancestry way back in like before it was cool to do it. So like props where props are due, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Um,
for sure.
where they really differentiate from other games is instead of like having like where you said in Quest like 8 or 9 different classes, and D&D it's like
Mm-hmm.
11 or 12. I lost count. I think it's 11.
And then yeah,
Um,
there's several.
yeah, in Fantasy Age, it's only 4. You only get the 4. Like, no, it's 3. I'm wrong. 3. You get the 3 basics that every RPG gives you.
Fighter, rogue, caster.
Yep. Fighter, rogue,
Because
mage,
those are the 3 for from Dragon Age.
Yeah, so it makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
But where it really makes where you get to really differentiate your character is focuses, which is like skills, and you can like upgrade your you can increase your focus and skills or take on new focuses. Ancestries will provide those. You have your stats. There are more stats than D&D, and there's more that goes into like attacking actually and stuff. It's really cool
Okay.
how they handle their stats. And at first it's a little like rolling for stats was a little wonky, but once we figured it out, it's like, oh, so there are parts of
it clicks.
Yeah, there's parts of it that's like, oh, it like your brain's gonna have to work a little bit, especially around that like 3d6 bit. But like, so you have that, and where you really differentiate your classes is like, classes are pretty modular in design. So like, that's how they fix that issue. So playing a fighter twice doesn't feel the same because you can pick completely different focuses. Fighters and rogues use talents as like their special abilities. You get completely different talents. And casters, you can take completely different spell schools and stuff. It uses mana points for a casting system because thank fucking God, Vancian magic is the worst. Everyone else has been doing mana points. Why can't TTRPG? Jesus Christ. Age finally looked at it and said, why is no one doing this? And it isn't too terrible. It's a little different. Casters definitely lose a lot of power that they had in D&D. D&D's casters are like up here, like in terms of power level. And I just see a few questions in chat or some comments in chat. Axolotl Kier is asking, how much does age change, or do I anticipate it to changing Agora's Bells? And does it land itself to a different playstyle, method of problem solving, etc.? And yes, to all of that. The way Age plays is definitely different. It fits Agora's Bells, high adventure, almost action-oriented, like comic. I don't want to call it comic book, but we definitely got like the Marvel style of fights where it's like these big epic battles that are just like plucky heroes versus giant dragon with dead people's names inscribed on it, dead demon names inscribed on its scales. That's the next fight we're having tomorrow, so check it out.
Spoilers. Tag your spoilers.
Sorry. So it's definitely really gonna make a large change to the way it plays. My character converting wasn't too terrible because they had lightning and healing magic. I was playing a Tempest cleric, but I'm definitely feeling some of that power loss a little bit. I don't get to just do things because I'm a caster. Age makes casters. I can speak from the caster point because that's what I'm playing, but age makes casters actually have to like see if they can succeed on casting their spells. It's not just a guarantee every time. And I'm chill with that. I think that's great. And it prevents a lot of that weird, like, oh, let me just roll saves for every freaking monster right here.
Well, and it makes it like, and of course, like, here comes Megan with her, but the narrative.
Yeah.
But it makes it narratively interesting if you don't succeed
at everything.
Casting a spell.
Yes.
Like I am a firm believer in like failing forward and like taking failures and making them into something narratively interesting beyond just like, oh, you failed.
Yeah.
Like,
and a lot of that
building
GM
from
stuff.
that is like building from that is really cool, and having those opportunities to like use your failures as like a springboard to improve and things like that.
And does it change a lot the way we approach problem solving? Me personally, no, because I'm Leroy Jenkins, and that's how I solve a lot of problems. But it definitely has changed the way we do approach situations. I mean, we haven't really played it a ton, so like the effects, I don't know if we're all feeling them right this very second, but like stunts have definitely changed the way that like I look at skill checks, the way we look at fighting, because now it's like, oh, we can all do all kinds of really cool random maneuvers without like having to invest all of my character resources into doing cool maneuvers in battle. It's definitely going to be a large change also, again, because like the power level is definitely very different. D&D, especially 5e, 5e's super guild, 2e and 1e aren't. 5e's guilty of this. You're invincible in 5e. But like in Fantasy Age, I definitely feel
Do you feel mortal?
I feel like a mortal finally. Like it's definitely different. And I think it's really gonna change the way. Like I'm gonna stop just running in every time. My joke has been like I got a little like. My joke is one of the first groups I ever DM'd for actually came from like Warhammer role playing games. So they approached every problem cautiously. They would plan everything like Navy SEALs. They looked at everything like, okay, what's like the worst thing that like how many of us are gonna die coming out of this one? D&D, you don't have that, but Fantasy Age, I feel like that's gonna be a part of planning. Is like, oh, we have to be careful now. I can't just run at the big boss and eat a few hits. But yeah, it's really cool. And then they add like specializations where you can kind of like you get more focuses based off a specialization you pick. But I do recommend, if you do want to play Age, because the books are not that expensive, getting the Fantasy Age companion. It really expands your options in terms of ancestries, class options, stuff like that. Definitely really helpful. That's where you get your beast folk. Age handled beast folk flawlessly, unlike a lot of systems. And instead, they just kind of put it all in one catch-all and say, pick A, B, or C. That's the kind of beast folk you are. And I think it works really well. Yeah.
Speaking of books, I had remembered something I had wanted to talk about, but I'm going to ask you, as far as just diving into your rule book,
Yes.
How like easy to parse is it? Like if I were to pick up Fantasy Age, like how accessible is it as far as just like if I were to open it up, having never played it and knowing nothing about it, like what is that? What does that look like as far as, would you say that it's something that's like easy to parse and easy to like understand? Obviously you can't learn how to play a TTRPG from a book, you learn from playing. But how firm of a handle do you think you can get with the feel and the tone and the way that it plays from the book itself?
I tried to touch on it. I think I touched on this a little bit. This isn't like Quest where I can pick it up and figure it out tomorrow. This is definitely, I found building a character really helped me figure out the system a lot. I played it before. I played some one-shots with pre-gens. Chase from Dice Priory, that was the first time I tried Age, was at PAX U.
Oh, cool.
So, like, playing it is where I learned it. Making a character. I see why a lot of books begin with making a character. As I mentioned, there's some parts where it's just really clunky, and I don't know why. And it's like you kind of like have to like be like, yo, like I reached out to Chris, the GM. I'm like, bro, am I doing this right? Like, why does this seem so confusing? He's like, look, it seems really confusing, but then he explained it to me. I'm like, oh, so there's definitely I would definitely recommend coming in with a little more experience with RPGs than like.
Yeah, and
I'm not gonna plop this down in front of someone who's never played and say, "Here, read this, figure it out." Like that. Like that's the kind of learning curve I think it has. Is like, if you've played an RPG, it makes sense. There's some clunky parts you kind of have to read twice or three times through to really get it to like click. But they just, I would not like slam the book. I wouldn't even slam Dungeons and Dragons 5e down in front of someone who's never played an RPG and said, figure this out. Like, I wouldn't do it with Fantasy Age either. Quest, I would, but that doesn't mean Fantasy Age is a bad game. Actually, some of the advantages of having some more crunch is that there is less stress in me having to figure out, like, what am I good at? How am I going to shine over the other players? Are we going to have the 4E problem? Is everyone just going to feel this like the same class, just with different dressings, right? When you mentioned like everyone's a bard a little bit in Quest, I was like, because that was like a 4E criticism, was like, that was like something I've actually said, was like, everyone's a fucking bard. And like I was like,
there's the potential for to be
that's the difference, right? But
yeah,
like,
and I think sometimes like mechanics, like it's a crapshoot, because sometimes games have mechanics that just trip you up and kind of like get in your way of playing the game. But then good mechanics in a well-designed game, the mechanics are there to help you lead the story and lead what you're doing. And I think like even games that feel a little stilted or a little like hard to parse, like in a book, play much smoother because they're well designed, and it's not a bunch of mechanics for the sake of having mechanics. It's mechanics that help guide you in a way without getting you all tripped up in doing math or figuring out what your modifier is based on how heavy your weapon is, and
the math,
that kind of thing.
The math in Age is actually really nice. It's not.
I mean,
terrible.
I can add 3d6. So
yeah, 3d6 plus maybe 5 or 6 at the most, and then plus a 2 or 3 or whatever from your skill focus.
Oh, all right, well, no, now I'm lost. I can't add more than 20. So.
Well, the nice thing is what happens as you're playing the game. It makes sense as you're doing it. D6s for some reason just add up easier in the head than D20s for me.
Oh yeah, they're just same. D6s are just like, oh yeah, okay.
And what I really like is, unlike D&D where they shoehorn you into a skill at level 1 and this is all you will ever be able to be good at. Fantasy Age, you get a little more freedom. You get to be like, do I want to invest more in this skill that I've already got points in, or do I want to go like novice it up in a new thing? That's really cool. I like that.
And that's what I like about Quest as well, is that you start off, you pick 5 abilities, and then you get a new ability every time you level up, and you can take it from any tree that you want within your role. So even if you're like, oh, I'm going to start off, I want to be an infiltration spy, or I want to be a illusion magician, like after a couple sessions you could be like, all right, you know what, like this seems really interesting, so I'm going to start taking abilities from this role. And it's nice that your character evolves as you do, and it's not the choices you make at the beginning of the game have locked you in more or less to what it is your role will be within the party. Like I love games that allow you to change, and nothing is like everything is moving.
The only problem with that model, I love that model, but there's also a dark side to that model. Again, this is like I see merits and faults in everything.
What is that shadowy place over there?
That shadowy place over there is, oh shit, I made a bad character. Because that can happen when you give players too much freedom and too much mechanics to choose between. Everything sounds cool, and you make a shitty jack of all trades. I've played games where it's like, we do not recommend making a jack of all trades. You will not have a good time. Like, I've seen games recommend that. Axolotl Cure has another question for us. I'll let you finish your thought, but I just wanted to like let them know, like, I see you.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for all of your questions. This has been wonderful. And yeah, I think the good thing, like Quest kind of like helps prevent that, because you can only choose like within your role, so that helps with that kind of thing. But I definitely see how, like, if it's like in essence like I multi-class into another class every level, and I have one level in every class. Basic. Like there's in meh.
Yeah. I get it.
But Axolotl Cure's question: how do Age and or Quest change the role of GM? Is it easier, harder? Does it change the general experience of GMing? Do you want to go first, or would you like me to go?
I mean, I can kind of start fielding it. Also, you're not asking too many questions, please. It's actually giving us stuff to talk about.
This is wonderful. So you go first, and then I will talk about
Yes,
Quest.
and thank you for your questions, everyone, because now I don't have to try and come up with other systems that I've played to talk about. But to
No,
answer the
this is
question,
great.
if you have GM'd for Dungeons and Dragons before, Age is going to feel the only thing you like. Of course, when you learn a new system, you got to learn how to like balance your encounters and stuff. I think balancing encounters is a myth. Just try and kill everyone at all times. Anyway,
If they survive, good on them.
just throw monsters at them. That's my approach. Just throw something at them. The real fun is making interesting encounters. And I love with Age kind of with the stunts. As a GM, you get more of those dynamic moments in fights. So like
Really
that's
cool.
where it's different. Is combat's gonna start to feel a little more dynamic in Age than D&D, where instead it's like I roll, I hit, I deal damage, I cast a spell, roll to save, I fail. Where Age is like, okay, I rolled, okay, I'm gonna do this, and I rolled, oh, I stunted, I'm gonna do some stunts now, and that can like, it just makes it the flow so much more dynamic, but it has that familiar feel of like, I'm the GM, I'm still taking monster turns, I'm still rolling for their attacks, they still have abilities and spells they can use. And it'll feel pretty familiar, but it'll start to feel more dynamic, and I love that.
Awesome. So, Quest, I speak from a player perspective, having never GM'd and being one of those people that's just, I am a very, just very slowly getting my feet under myself as someone who runs games. But Quest puts, I don't want to say it puts more on the GM because it doesn't so much. It all depends on your players. And I know that that's kind of like a cop out, but it's kind of the same in any TTRPG you're playing. But Quest, when it's a game that is driven so heavily by the narrative, it all depends on your players. So if you're
Yeah.
a GM where your players are in it and they're going to drive the story, you can kind of take a back seat and just kind of steer them towards events as you need to.
So
But if you have players who are getting used to this kind of gameplay and aren't huge RPers, you may need to take more, like, take, it might be a little harder because you might need to take the reins a little bit to help get them where
yeah.
they need to go.
So like the way I would
Yeah.
look at it is like Fantasy Age is very much traditional GM. If you're used to the traditional GM role, perfect for you. Quest is a much more reactive narrative style GM. You're more reacting to what your players are trying to do.
Yeah. I feel like it's a lot in the veins of like a PBTA, like how you would GM a PBTA game, where your planning is less balancing encounters and more making an outline of scenes and story beats that you're hoping to get to.
Real talk, Quest is just PBTA with a D20.
Maybe that's why I love it so much.
I mean, like, I'm just kind of like, it's kind of hidden.
Like, which that can lead into TK Pirate 13's question, which is D&D is all about how much damage you can deal in one turn. How does damage work in Age and Quest? So Quest, because Quest just takes everything and simplifies it down in a way that is so beautiful and makes way for the story, your items always do 2 damage. Enemies do assorted amounts of damage. They have a deck of potential like enemies. The art is super cute. So enemies will do varying amounts of damage, but as a rule, all weapons that players have do 2 damage. All players, you have 10 HP. That's just what you have. You can heal by taking a long rest, having a sleep. Or being healed by a healer in your party. So Quest is very straight up and down. If you do get if you roll a 20, you do double damage, or more, depending on if you're tying an ability to an attack, that may modify your damage output in the same way that if you use a spell that creates armor for you, that gives you a little bit of soak, like a little bit of resistance to taking damage, but armor class isn't a thing in attack modifiers, and damage modifiers aren't a thing. You just do a straight amount of damage for every weapon you have. You have a straight amount, everybody has the same HP. It's like I said, Quest is meant to be, it's a very simplified system. For better or worse, depending on what you want out of your TTRPG. I really enjoy that I don't have to think about that.
No, there is a lot of
Yeah.
merit to a simple design. I mean, it's a design philosophy many have been
Yeah.
approaching more and more and more. There is a, as I've said, I can see the merit. There's a lot of merit
Right.
to it. So in age, it's basically, it's very similar to Dungeons and Dragons, where you have hit points. Your hit points go down as you take damage. You do have an armor score. You have a defense score. I believe armor helps you with negating some damage. Again, I am like very I'm pretty fresh to the system, so I'm actually staring at my character sheet right now. All damage is dealt in d6s, so it like makes it where the scaling and everything makes sense. I don't mind when systems do that. I know a lot of folks love it when systems let you use your full set of dice. Age likes its d6s. And there's healing magic. There's resting. A lot of ages. The reason I mention it is a great D&D adjacent system is a lot of it. It feels different enough where you feel like you're playing a different game, but it's similar enough that it makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas like
it's like it has its own stuff, but it's also for somebody looking to transition from one system to another. There's enough familiarity there that it's not going to be a giant hiccup when you're moving over.
Yeah, and like
it's nice.
Like Quest is great, it's cool, but like that change can be really jarring, especially if you've got a group
absolutely
who's kind of iffy if they want to switch. Like I would probably move towards age if they like your group is really like, I don't know, man.
Right. Like I would definitely suggest the same. I know with no initiative, we are a group of people who love our role play. Like that's what we're here to do more so. Like, and we love the mechanical side of things too, but it's we're here for the Nat.
Oh, Nat, love him.
A genius. Oh, Nat, but he's an amazing guide in addition to just being a wonderful role player. But for our group, it made perfect sense for us to move to a game like Quest. When we were playing 5e, like we avoided combat with all that we had because we didn't want to spend our time on it. And now playing Quest, like we still have combat, but like we had combat in our first session and it took 10-15 minutes, whereas if it had been in D&D it would have taken probably an hour.
Honestly, that is my measure of a good fucking system. Can I get combat done in like 15 minutes if I want to?
And it was still good, impactful combat. It didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel disjointed. It felt like a good combat encounter.
Yeah.
But it just so happened to be the system. Like there is no initiative. It's just like when the spirit moves you to do something, like you're gonna do it. In just the way that it keeps spinning and moving. There's a lot of forward momentum in Quest. That is really nice. Like this, like Izza said, like it's so streamlined. Everything about Quest is very simplified and streamlined down so that you just get down to it, whatever it is.
So another question, does age rely on any setting assumptions like D&D, planes, demons, gods, etc.? Does it lend itself to a different kind of setting as opposed to 5e? Age, as I mentioned earlier, it was like Green Ronin's attempt to make a more generic fantasy, and they kind of like take that idea of genericness not to the extreme. Like they have their own stuff where it's like you can definitely tell like, oh yeah, like Orleans are just metal people like Warforged, like, but they just made their own name for it. Like there's some stuff like that, but there is no presumption.
So it's like system agnostic, basically. Like you can create any, or setting agnostic.
Yeah, it's good setting agnostic. Definitely has that feel. Does it lend itself to a different kind of setting as opposed to 5e? Yeah, I feel like it actually handles that sense of like high adventure. I wouldn't dare go full-blown swashbuckling, but you can definitely get more of a swashbuckling, pulpy action adventure
Mhm.
feel out of it than say like D&D, where D&D sometimes D&D wants to be a Marvel movie, but it feels like a war game. Age actually feels like the Marvel movie with the
That's cool.
dynamicness of it. Yeah, like that's what and like with it being more setting agnostic. I'm a big guy. I run most of my shit homebrew. I don't do the whole
Hmm.
like pre-made setting stuff. I've done Forgotten Realms games. I've done like the games in the pre-made settings, but when I run them, I like doing my own stuff because then
Hmm.
I don't need to know anything and I just love world building.
You just
Um
make it up on the fly. Yep.
Exactly. So, like,
And
age gives you enough to kind of work with to make a world around, but it doesn't tell you this is the world. This is how it is. So it's really nice that you can just kind of port stuff over from like we were just easily able to port a lot of our stuff over from D&D. We had to like mess around with some of the ancestries and stuff, you know, like when you play like a furball who's supposed to be a yeti, you kind of got to like bend the rules. And again, kind of like Quest, age is also wonderful in that it is hackable. You can
hmm
you can hack
love
it, you can
it.
change it, you can make your own stunt tables. Like it's wonderful. And you know, like we talk about hacking games and everyone like we all talk about I know it comes up a lot, but like people talk about like D&D and how great it is for hackability, but like Age and Quest are built to be hacked. Like they're both
Like
built to be like
in
taken apart, put back together.
in I don't know how Green Ronin handles it, but like I said earlier, like Quest, like the creator of Quest is actively out there saying, please rip this game apart, please make it your
Yeah.
own, like post these modules, like send them to me and I will support them,
Mm-hmm.
like I will retweet them and signal boost them and things like, and that's so cool for a creator of a game to be out here just being like, I wrote this game but I want it to also be yours,
That
so
is,
here are all of the tools you need to make it yours,
yeah.
which is so refreshing.
Yeah. I don't think Green
um
Ronin's got like a nice open license thing going on, but
mhm.
I mean, obviously they enjoy hacking it because they made how many other
Right.
age games, and like you can
Well, and it's
hack it.
nice that the mechanic, like the base mechanics, are able to be so
Yeah.
transferable setting to setting, which is really
And the nice
cool.
thing is, it's been out for a while. There's like
Hmm.
whole ass websites where people just post up hacks and stuff. So like,
That's awesome.
like one of the advantages, like one of the disadvantages of playing. This is not Quest's fault. This is not any newer game's fault. But the disadvantage of playing a new game is you don't have a lot of that support, not just from the dev,
Hmm.
but from the community. You don't have all that stuff
Yeah.
where I can just jump onto a Reddit forum or like an RPG Codex forum and be like, okay, I need to do X, Y, and Z. What do we got? And get like 5,000 links. Like,
Or it's like, I want a class that does XYZ, or I want an enemy that does XYZ. Yeah.
yeah.
But I know like a lot of the community around Quest like kind of hit the ground running
Oh,
when their
yeah.
open license was released. So there is already a lot of stuff, and the Quest Discord is incredibly active, and the writer of the game is
Mhm.
incredibly active in the Quest Discord, which is really cool as
Yeah.
well to have that kind of interaction. Like he is very like it's not hard to
Yeah. I
talk
mean,
to him,
I mean,
which is cool.
I'm not gonna hide the fact that I think Quest became the darling of
Yeah.
the internet, like TTRPG Twitter, really fast.
Mm.
Um, and I'm not trying. I'm like again, I'm not hating. I'm just like it's incredible to see the amount of content that's already there for a
Hmm.
game that's not been out very
No,
long.
it has not been out long.
Like you're
Um,
usually like the amount of content Quest has, you're usually
mhm,
fortunate to see that after maybe like a year of a game
mhm.
being out, right? Like the true testament of has a game been out long enough,
Yeah,
don't do this, is go to the
yeah, and
trove.
yeah, yeah, and I think it speaks to the TTRPG community like wanting something new and
Yeah.
wanting to try new systems, and that's so it makes me so happy as someone who loves so
Hmm.
many different RPG systems and like tries to boost and talk about as many different ones as somebody will let me talk about, hence this.
I was gonna say
um
that's why we're doing
and also
this.
that's why we're here. that's why Unprepared exists. Like, I just want to talk about new games and new systems, and seeing such a rally around a newer game like Quest just like shows that what people like, that people were wanting something else, wanting something new,
Yeah.
which
And I mean,
is really cool.
and this was going on before the
Mm.
big event
Mm.
Ground Zero.
Before the magicians of the side.
Before the big thing happened. If you don't know what we're
Before this,
talking about, don't ask. I'm not gonna answer in chat. I've
you
answered this
sweet,
question.
you sweet
So,
summer child.
you sweet summer child, just log the fuck off the internet. Never open it back up, and just live in ignorant bliss.
Just live your life, play Quest, play Age.
But like my point is like these conversations have been going on for a long time. People like I was already talking about switching from D&D. I'd been playing it for almost 6 years at that point. Like it was time for me to stretch the wings out, try new systems, and I have been, and it's a blast, and I love it. That's why we're doing this again. Is because and like a lot of our games are switching systems, and it's like, yeah, it's wild to switch a campaign when you're pretty much halfway through to a different system, but like it's kind of exciting because it's like, what kind of cool storytelling, like Axolotl Cure was asking, like what changes will we see in the storytelling to problem solving and to whatever with rules that actually want to support those concepts, right?
Yeah, and I know within No Initiative, that was something we were saying, like when we were gearing up for Quest to start, is there's just this really intense, like almost renewed energy to trying out a new system when you've been playing the same one as a group for so long. Like it's so exciting and refreshing to be trying something new and figuring out and kind of like jumping and hoping the net will appear and hoping it's going to be a good fit and it's going to work, and that's always the chance you take with trying new systems. But there are so many out there, like I said earlier, like if you are trying new systems and the first one you try doesn't quite work, just keep going, because there are so many out there and you're going to find the one that's perfect for you and what you want out of a game.
And honestly, like we'll answer Axolotl Cure's last question will be the last question. We are running out of time.
Yes, we are. Thank you so much, everyone.
But like the wild part is like people think so, like D&D is the reference point for how much RPGs should will cost. What people don't realize is you need to buy 3 fucking books to play D&D and to learn D&D. You don't need that for most of the games we're talking about. Fantasy Age, you only need this one to learn the game, the basic rule book. But as I said, if you want options, take the compendium.
I say this is your GM's guide. This is your player's guide. The PDF is $20. The book is $30, and this is all you need. There are cards that have. And there are cards that have like your enemies and stuff on them, but like the PDF comes with like the physical book comes with a free PDF that has PDFs of literally everything you need to play the game.
And these are like,
and this is all you need.
This isn't just the 2 games we're talking about right now either. I'm talking about like almost every other fucking game I've tried. Zweihander, if you get the core rule book, is the reason it's 600 fucking pages is because
I got this for $20.
Yeah, the core book's like
there
30.
Was a sale.
Yeah, the core book's like 30 on sale. It's so wild.
It's so good.
All right, well we're gonna answer this last question so we can both log off. And I've worked 10 hours today. I need rest.
Samesies. But thank you all for coming. We'll answer the last question and we'll do outros.
And then
thank you.
And then I'll kick us to the AFK screen while we choose who to raid, and you can listen to some saucy tunes.
Okay. So let me do you think the community adoration around Quest is a pendulum that will eventually swing back to something super mechanical? I'm not sure. Like we had said kind of consistently throughout this, because we're both kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum as far as crunch versus cream. That I think that the swing wasn't necessarily because it wasn't super mechanical. I think it's kind of a combination of good timing with the stuff. that happened that had people looking for an alternative to D&D, and this happened to kind of be rising as that happened and people latched on it because it's super easy to port an existing D&D game into a system like this, and the same with something like Age. It's
Yeah.
I think a lot of the excitement around Quest was the ability to move pre-existing D&D games to this system for people that no longer wanted to be
Mm-hmm.
playing and supporting those products. And I think a lot of it came from that. So I don't think it's necessarily because of the mechanics or lack thereof. I think a lot of it was good timing
Yeah.
and just being a nice streamlined game that's easy to have taken existing D&D content and moved it into this other game.
I think Quest is popular because of the reason you said, good
Mhm.
timing, but I
Yeah.
also think Quest is popular with Twitter because I've said this in many private chats. Quest is a game made for Twitter, like pretty much by Twitter. And something that I have to remind myself of constantly, and just everyone else should too, is I highly recommend it. Twitter's not the whole TTRPG community, so like
It is not.
Twitter's tastes are not the same as some other like circles I've seen. I'm not discrediting Quest as being popular. I think it is very popular. I think a lot of what Megan said has helped it take off. I think also tastes will change. Tastes
Mhm.
do change.
Oh, always.
I don't think Quest is going away. I don't think it's going to ever go away. But I think eventually, as the years go on and as tastes change, there'll be another big shakeup that'll happen. And it might be super crunchy because people want something crunchy. It might not be. It might be a perfect mix of the two.
Yeah.
It's trends, tastes change. I mean, shit. OD&D used to be the D&D. Like, games used to be the focus on that crunch, kill, loot, repeat. And
Mhm.
now we're starting to see like this really new deep dive into a more narrative style of play and focusing less on mechanics and more on narrative. And I think people are excited to explore that. And I think that's really helped Quest take off a lot too, is people wanting to finally I call this the RPG renaissance. Honestly, like
Mhm.
I have not seen this much love for RPGs. I have not seen this many people talk about it. When I was younger, I didn't tell people publicly that I played Dungeons and Dragons. I wouldn't be caught dead playing Dungeons and Dragons on stream. Like, we are in this weird unknown time where anything goes, and games that aren't made by WotC or one of the big companies actually are starting to see a lot of fucking polish. And it's awesome because it's really funny when you look at games that aren't D&D from like pre-2015. It's like, oh, you can really tell. Like, because like now there's a market to it. There's money to be made.
Mhm.
Quest is also proven like, yeah, there's a game out there when it comes to making RPGs. Like,
Yeah.
D&D, it might be the king, but like,
It's not the be all end all
yeah, I
in
mean,
TTRPGs.
other games have existed since D&D first
Mhm.
came out. Bunnies and Burrows was the first game to use freaking skills. Not even Dungeons and Dragons didn't even use skills the first time. It was a game based on Watership Down that came up with the idea of skills. So like, I think like because Powered by the Apocalypse was super revolutionary in terms of this narrative focus, levels of success on rolling, and it just hasn't really but it hasn't like punched into that mainstream fantasy. Like, yeah, Dungeon World, we don't talk about Dungeon World, but like
We don't talk about
it never really punched into the fantasy RPG stream. But Quest
Mhm.
did it in a way that was familiar to people who've played Dungeons and
Mhm.
Dragons, but yet was powered by the apocalypse. It was apocalypse enough that it did scratch that little itch that people might have.
Mhm.
And I think that's where a lot of that popularity is coming from. I will admit, I actually think it would have been much more I think it still would have been popular even without the issues.
Incident.
Yeah, the incident. It may
I
have been.
would agree that it would still be. I don't think it would have taken off. I think a lot of it too is there are people that like there doesn't always need to be one
Yeah.
dominant TTRPG. So it's not like Quest came out and people are like, this is the new D&D. Like there doesn't need to be a new D&D. There are so many games out there. There doesn't need to be one monolithic
Yes.
be all end all game. Like there's something out there for everyone. There
Yes.
doesn't need like the indie RPG scene is just awash with incredible creators making just insanely good games right now. Like there's so
Yeah.
many on Kickstarter or coming to Kickstarter
I
that
mean,
are incredible games. So it's just a matter of
finding
kind
them.
of just finding them, like broadening your horizons and seeing what's out
Yes.
there, because there doesn't need to be one game. There are a bajillion of them.
And you'll find that certain games do things that you want to do better than what your game you were
Hmm.
first playing was
Yeah,
doing.
so don't settle for shoehorning what you want into a game.
That it's not designed
find
for.
find the game that works for
Yeah.
you, and hopefully you'll keep coming back and joining us as we do more of these system talks, and you can learn about some cool new systems.
Yeah, and we know that finding new games is a lot of work, and the idea of
Hmm.
this show is to help folks like yourselves explore these games without having to do all the hard work and spend the money and the research. Um, so anyway, we'll close it out. I'm Alex. You can find me online as at Mr. Puddins. Join the Discord. If you ever want to chat about different systems, different games, you want to bash on games, well, specific game,
There's a
like
channel for that.
there used to be. We changed over to System Hype. Like, but I'm willing to help you sit down if there's a game you're curious about and you like at me and say, "Mr. Puddin, you seen this game? Like, is it good?" I'll sit down. I'll try and answer. If I got time, I'll try and answer some questions you got. So follow me there. Follow Chromatic Chimera. Tomorrow, if you liked what you heard about Age and you want to see it in action, join us tomorrow for Agora's Bells at 7 p.m. EST, right here as we take on a dragon in Fantasy Age, and it's amazing. Like our first actual, like, not throwaway fight that's trying to teach us the rules is gonna be a dragon. Anyway, Megan.
Hello, I'm Megan. You can find me most places on the internet at Megan Lynn for the win. I am there all the time, usually talking about TTRPGs. I try to do threads. I currently owe Twitter a thread breaking down Blades in the Dark, but I've done a couple
Nice.
threads about systems already. I've done Masks and Monster of the Week in addition to a thread about GMless games. So I love TTRPG systems. That's why I'm here. If you ever have questions about them, you can also at me, Megan Lynn FTW, and I will do everything I can to help you out. You can find me here every Monday at 6:30 with No Initiative playing Quest the Soaring City, where I play Lena, a disaster spy with a mechanical arm, and she is a delight, and I love her very much. You can also find me here next Tuesday, so a week from today, at 7 o'clock for my show Unprepared, where I facilitate GMless and Prepless games for my friends. We are playing Beak, Feather, and Bone this month, which is a world building, lore building game about a city of raven folk, which
Ooh.
is very fun, that I'm very excited to be playing. I am also an indie game designer, and you can find any of my games at meganlynnftw.itch.io. I think they're pretty cool. If you like GM-less narrative storytelling games, then have at. There are a few there.
They are excellent. I have played and ran them. They are great. Highly recommend one particular harbor. I ran it.
If you like pirates.
I ran it on Friday with a group of mostly strangers, and we all had a good time. And it even got spicy. So, like, check it out. It's fun.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm gonna take us to the "we'll be right back," but that's gonna be a big lie. We won't be back. We're gonna go raid someone instead.
Yes.
So
thank you all for coming. Your questions were amazing. We hope you enjoyed this. And we will make sure to shout the next time we have one of these scheduled, so we can come talk about more systems.
Yes. We don't know what the next topic is going to be, so keep an eye on
We
the
do not know what the
socials.
next topic is, but when we decide, you will be the first to know.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for all your questions. Check out the sponsors. I put all those links should be in chat already. And bye-bye.